Hey yo, shout out to the top percent. That's you guys. I'm Writer Joey, and this is FutureSight. Today I'm going to be trying something a little different with the episode. As well as it just being me recording solo, I'm also going to try and build this episode around the deck list. So, just a little heads up, this format's kind of unique yet. It might not be the best episode, but I'm going to try my best, and I'm hoping that y'all can improve over time. With that said, let's get on to today's episode, Speed Darkrai. Speed Darkrai has cropped up recently due to the success of Darkrai Hydreigon. The key focus of the deck is to be swinging with Darkrai, turn 2 for Purple Night Spear, giving you 90 to the active and 30 to the bench. To do this, the deck removes the Stage 2 Hydreigon line and any ability to tank, in favour of adding consistency boosting trainers. With that said, let's get straight into the list. We start off with the 3 Darkrai X. Darkrai is the main attacker of the deck, using Night Spear to do 90 to the active, 30 to the bench. He also comes with the added bonus that anything with Dark Energy attached will have free retreat. Effectively in this list, meaning that anything with energy attached will have free retreat. The reason I've put 3 Darkrai in the skeleton list is the whole fact that once you lose the 3rd Darkrai, it's game over. Your opponent will have taken 3 minuses. That being said, you can run 4 Darkrai if you fear Darkrai being prized at all. It won't hurt consistency to have the 4th Darkrai. I just personally prefer the idea of having 3. Next, we move on to Sableye. Sableye is effectively the core engine for this deck. Using Junk Hunt, you can pick up any trainer item cards that you've already used, allowing for reuse of key cards like Dark Patch, Ultra Ball, and Catcher. It also means that you can opt to drop cards such as Eviolite or Dark Claw for cards like Ultra Ball and Computer Search, knowing that Sableye can easily pick them back up for you. The reason I've put 4 Sableye on the list is the whole fact that Sableye is your key start. Your preferred start is to have a Sableye active, a Darkrai on bench, and to build up the field from there. It also means you don't have to spend any resources retreating an active Darkrai into Sableye to get your engine going. That's a major reason that you also really want to run more Sableye than Darkrai. It just increases the chances of the favoured Sableye start. That's basically the basic Pokemon for this list covered. Next, we'll move on to trainers and supporters. The support lineup for this is 4 Juniper, 4 N, 2 Bianca, and 1 Skylar. The 4 Professor Juniper in this list pretty much speaks for itself. Juniper is one of the most powerful draw cards in the format. Added onto the fact that you can use Juniper to discard energies to your discard pile, for use with Dark Patch later, and it just becomes an all-round tool for that. The beautiful thing about this deck is, with a card like Juniper, you don't have to be too afraid of dropping a Dark Patch or 2 in with your first Juniper, because you always have Sableye to pick them back up. You can still get them back to your hand. You can still gain those pluses. Next we have 4 N. N is it's an amazing card in this format. It's the only real disruption we have. Plus, in the opening few turns of the game, N for you is basically Professor Oak's new theory. It is, at this moment in time, it is the only shuffle draw we have. When Plasma Storm's released in a few months, we will get Colorless, which acts in a very similar way, but N gives you much more manageable numbers. Early game with N, you pretty much guarantee a draw of 6 cards. It also means that if you're going second and your opponent's done anything to try and establish a hand for the following turn, you pretty much negated their entire last turn. They want to add cards on. Say you're in the Dark Rank match. Your opponent's just used Sableye Jump Hunt to pick up a Dark Patch and a Catcher. Using N, those 2 cards are going back into the deck. Your opponent no longer has Dark Patch and Catcher guaranteed to them. It also means that you're potentially giving your opponent a slightly smaller hand, and a smaller hand has less options. I think that's pretty much all I can say for N. N does what N does. The next card I've placed on the skeleton list is Bianca. Now, the reason I've gone for Bianca over Sharon is just with how well this deck works. The deck contains 4 Ultra Ball and 1 Computer Search, as well as an array of trainer cards. You can give yourself an incredibly small hand very easily. while I've been testing this deck, it's not been uncommon for at least once, twice, even 3 times a game. I've come to the point where the last card in my hand is either a Juniper or a Bianca. With Juniper, that's effectively +7 with no discard. Bianca, it's a full hand of 6. That being said, Sharon does guarantee 3 cards in hand. Well, I've never seen a situation where I've gone to use a Bianca and I've drawn less than 3. But this deck is just that good at getting cards out of your hand. With that said, we'll move on to the next supporter on this list, Skylar. Now, I know for a fact I've been talking so much about how trainer heavy this deck is. So, why have I only put 1 Skylar in my list? The reason there is only 1 Skylar in this list is because I'm a huge fan of Random Receiver. With Random Receiver, you are guaranteed a supporter. But 9 times out of 10, if you're using Random Receiver, you want to draw a supporter, you want Juniper, you want N, as push, you want Bianca. I personally prefer the idea of only 1 Skylar, just due to the fact that when I go for that Random Receiver, I don't want to hit it. I want the draw supporters. With that being said, when I'm using Random Receiver, I would rather have a 1 in 11 chance of hitting Skylar instead of a 4 in 14 chance of hitting Skylar. The numbers are pretty slim. With a 1 in 11 chance, it's literally less than 10% of the time you will hit Skylar. If you want 4 Skylar, you have a 1 in 3.5 chance. Oh, yeah, 1.35 chance of hitting a Skylar. So that's more than 30% of the time you'll hit Skylar, and it's not the card you prefer. That being said though, Skylar is a key card in this deck. I wouldn't say no to running more, but I wouldn't go above 2. Most of the time, if you do need to use Skylar to grab a specific trainer item card, using Bianca, N, or Juniper, you still stand a chance of drawing into that trainer item card. And very few cards in this deck will only run 1 or 2 on. Everything else you'll be running a maximum 4. So you really do have a high chance of hitting those cards early game. Mid to late game, you've most likely got all of use out of your trainer support engine and just playing the game on the field at that point. With support scope, let's quickly move on to the trains. The first trainer I've got listed is Dark Patch. Dark Patch is effectively your acceleration for this deck. The key priority with this deck is to discard as much energy as you can and then Dark Patch it out from your discard pile onto a Venture Darkrai. That's the whole reason that in this list I've actually placed it 4. It's a key card, you want it as consistently as possible. Combining cards like Ultra Ball, Dark Patch and Sableye, you can get a pretty effective stream of energy going. Moving on from Dark Patch, we next have 4 Pokemon Capture. 4 Pokemon Capture effectively speaks for itself. It's a huge staple in the current format. An added bonus with this deck though is the whole fact that even though you're playing 4 Capture, you can actually effectively play Capture more than 4 times. Due to Sableye, you don't have the restriction on playing Capture just 4 times and conserving the amount you play Capture. You can afford to play the early game Capture to drag something out of your opponents and try and stall them out slightly, knowing that Sableye can still go into your discard, pick it up, and allow you to use it again. In this deck, Capture becomes a bit more Capture becomes a more versatile card. It becomes less the card that gets you. It becomes less the card that nets you prizes, and more the card that nets you prizes and can disrupt your opponent. Next, we have 4 Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball is the key Pokemon search for this deck. The reason that it's actually 4 Ultra Ball and not less Ultra Ball and 1 or 2 Level Balls, so 6 grabbing Sableye, is the fact that Ultra Ball is the only card in formats that can guarantee the ability to grab on a Darkrai. Darkrai's hit points are far too high for anything like Level Ball, and his retreat cost is too low for anything like Heavy Ball. That being said, Ultra Ball also supports double choosing this deck. Ultra Ball isn't just a way to grab Pokemon, it's also a way to put energy into the discard pile before use with Dark Patch. It's also a way to thin your hand before using an N, because the less cards you put into your deck with N, the more chance you have of drawing different cards you will need, or less chance of drawing the same cards out. Another plus with this is the fact that because you run 4 Juniper, you don't want to really discard 2 or 3 trainer cards with Juniper. With Ultra Ball, you can at least make it feel like those 2 trainer cards that you're pitching are actually achieving something in the game instead of just being discarded from hand so you can get a new hand. The fact that it's also 4 Ultra Ball does combine quite well with the card Bianca. You can use Ultra Ball, grab a Darkrai and place it on your bench. You then follow with Bianca, and assuming your hand wasn't over 7 cards, you're guaranteed to net at least 3 cards. You're effectively already matched Sharon. If you have 6 or less cards in hand, you draw even more. Moving on from Ultra Ball, we actually move straight into Computer Search. Everything I just said for Ultra Ball can be said for Computer Search. The real glory of Computer Search is the fact that it's not just a case of, oh, it's another Ultra Ball, it grabs you any card from your deck. So you can use Computer Search to pitch a Dark Energy, and then grab the Dark. You can use it to grab you the game-winning capture. You can effectively use it the same as Ultra Ball and pick up a Pokemon. You can grab a Darkrai, you can grab a Sableye. Effectively, you could also use it to pick up support for a turn. You could pick up N, Juniper, Bianca. Computer Search has no limit on what it can really grab you. I mean, there's no limit at all. The only limit on Computer Search is the fact that you can only run 1. And I personally feel that's all that really needs to be said about Computer Search. It's a pretty damn broken card, that's why you only live 1 of it. That's why they made it a spec. Moving on from Computer Search, we move straight into Random Receiver. Now, here in the skeleton list, I've only placed 2. My personal preference is, if I can, after all, I will run 4. Effectively, Random Receiver acts as another card in your deck that says, I am a supporter. It also the main reason I run only 1 Skylar. As I said before, if I go for a Random Receiver, I only want a 1 in 11 chance of hitting the Skylar, because if I'm in a position where I'm using Random Receiver, I want a new hand, I want a draw supporter of some variety, I want the Bianca, the N, or the Juniper. The reason I like the idea of running 4 is just for pure consistency. I've only placed 2 here, because that seems like a component that a lot of people do settle on. My personal preference, as I said, is to run 4. Effectively, you do increase the number of split spaces in your deck from 11 to 15 cards that say I am a supporter. Sure, Random Receiver doesn't actually act as the supporter, but Random Receiver will net you a supporter, and 9 times out of 10 it's going to give you some kind of benefit or plus. It can grab you the Juniper for fresh hand reset, it can grab you the N to disrupt your opponent, it can grab you Bianca for pluses on hand. That being said, it can also grab Skylar. Most of the time you won't want the Skylar, but Skylar can still have its uses if you hit it off a Random Receiver. Skylar does grab you most of this deck. From Random Receiver, we actually move on to the 2 Pokemon Tour cards that are included in the skeleton list, running 2 of each, and they are Eviolite and Darkrai. Eviolite is in here just for standard reason that every Pokemon you run is basic. It can be put onto anything. You can put on your early game Sableye, it can effectively tank an extra hit, or it can go onto Darkrai. In a Darkrai mirror match, it's going to force your opponent to actually play a game where they either use their tools grapper, or they settle for 3-shotting your Darkrai in place of these kind of 2 shots. Against decks like Keldeo Blastoise, it means they have to invest the extra energy on the Keldeo. If they do invest extra energy, even though it's only 1 extra energy, you put it into the discard pile, and it means they need more resources to effectively get all the energy back and put it back on the field. And against the predictable fighting match, which will be most likely be cards like Landorus X and Terrakion, it stops the 1-shot Revenge Hail from Terrakion's Retaliate. The 180 damage it would have outputted becomes 160. It means they have to settle for the 2 shots. In that time, you can effectively set up a second Darkrai and even retreat from the damaged Darkrai into the fresh Darkrai. Moving on from Eviolite though, we also have Darkrai. Now, the reason I've included Darkrai is, even though I personally feel it's situational, it helps immensely against the Blastoise Keldeo matchup. Without Darkrai, it would normally take 3 turns, or 2 turns with 2 catches, to take out your opponent's benched Blastoise. The quick way to do it for 2 turns is to capture a Blastoise, hit it for 90, they then step in with Keldeo, you have to then use Catcher again to grab a Blastoise and finish it off. You can get the same results just using 1 Catcher, but it takes 3 turns instead, where you Night Spear the Blastoise on the bench twice, and then bring it into the position and Night Spirit for the KO. Using Dark Claw though, especially if you actually hold it in hand before going for the KO, you can easily Night Spirit the active Keldeo, 30 onto the bench Blastoise, then next turn capture the Blastoise, Dark Claw, KO, and you still have an extra 30 on the bench. Using that methodology, it's a quicker way of taking care of Blastoises. It also means you're in a better position to set up future KOs on any additional Blastoises they set up. If they set up the second Blastoise, you can use the 30 from the first Blastoise's knockout, place it on the second Blastoise, next turn, capture another knockout on Blastoise. Using Dark Claw, you can effectively turn around and say, well, I could spend 3 turns knocking out a Blastoise, or I can spend 3 turns knocking out 2 Blastoises. You take away 2 Blastoises in the Keldeo Blastoise matchup, and they're going to be struggling to get the third one out. The third one also becomes easy pickings, because effectively you can deal with the next Blastoise when it's still a Squirtle or a Wartortle, try and snap it off as a Wartortle, or you can drag out the Squirtle or Wartortle and one-shot it, effectively removing their energy acceleration engine. And that pretty much wraps up the trainers and supporters for this skeleton list. Next we have the energy, obviously. I've chosen 12 Darkness Energy. The reason I've gone with the 12 basic Dark Energy is the whole fact that there is no special Darking format, and everything in the deck currently uses basic Dark. It doesn't need anything else, so there's no need for prisms or blends. Also, basic Dark is the only energy that can be accelerated using Dark Patch. So with that neatly wrapped up, I'll move on to some options to actually help complete this list. First and foremost, I believe it's probably the most important card that a person should add to this list. The only reason I've not put it in here is because I really want to leave numbers up to you guys when it comes to customization on these lists. And the first card I would really think of adding is Energy Switch. Energy Switch is a great card trying to ensure you get the turn to Darkrai, and you can effectively do it off just one Dark Patch using Energy Switch. Obviously you're going to start the game Sableye active for his junk hunt. Assuming that first turn you get the energy onto Sableye, Dark Patch onto a bench Darkrai. With Energy Switch you can effectively afford to miss energy next turn. You still have the option to pre-retreat Sableye, use Energy Switch with the energy from Sableye onto your Darkrai. I don't personally think that's the best move, but if you are dedicated to the turn 2 Darkrai, then it's going to happen for you. While actually only subject to energy, I'm actually going to say a card now that is going to make a lot of people most likely turn away from this episode. It'll probably make a laughing stock of me mentioning it, but I feel it deserves mentioning in this deck. That card is Energy Search. Now, I know the standard argument for a card like Energy Search is, if you're going to run Energy Search, why not just run an extra energy in its place? And normally I would agree with that thinking, except not every deck has Sableye. Combining Energy Search and Sableye isn't a case of, oh, well, I get an energy, what do you do? It's a case of, I can get an energy a turn. It means you can afford to run a slimmer energy lineup. You could effectively take the energy lineup list deck down to 9 or 10 and still not have to worry about hitting an energy trait at any point, because you could easily go Energy Search, cover Dark Energy, Sableye, next turn, Energy Search, cover Dark Energy, Sableye. It stops you hitting the energy trait. It also effectively turns around and gives you more chance of having an energy in hand to pitch for a card like Ultra Ball or Computer Search. It's better to pitch at least one energy for a card like Ultra Ball or Computer Search, used with Dark Patch later, than it is to have to pitch 2 trainer cards. Having Energy Switch in there at least gives you more chance to have that option. An added bonus is the fact that each and every turn that you use Energy Switch, you are effectively thinning your deck. It's only 1 card per turn, but in the long game, 1 card per turn can add up. Of course, you're not going to be using it all the way through the game, but in your early game, getting those 2 or 3 cards out of deck means there's less energy that you want to draw into with Ed, with Juniper, with Bianca. You don't have to worry about having to draw into it because you're recruiting the energy. You don't have to worry about drawing into the energy in your late game when you really need crucial training cards because it's already on the field, it's already out of the deck. But that's just my personal take. I think Energy Switch can and does work in a stack, but I'll leave it up to you guys to decide. Another card that I've actually mentioned, I believe I mentioned while going through the cards of bot list here, Tool Scrapper is a great card to have in this deck. As I mentioned when covering Eviolite, Darkrai on Darkrai is a 2-shot unless there's an Eviolite. If an opposing Darkrai has Eviolite attached, you won't be hitting it for a 3-shot, and if your opponent gets that Eviolite then, they're going to start planning to have 3 turns per Darkrai. If at any moment you could just drop a Tool Scrapper, take away their Eviolites, all of a sudden you've taken away a third of their time. They can't spend 3 turns setting something up, they now have 2 turns to get set up. It allows you to basically continue Darkrai pressure. You get rid of their Eviolites early game, and it's a story. You just keep applying that pressure, you keep on hitting hard and fast. Mid to late game, it can at least add to your edge. This deck will start throwing out steam towards late game. Being able to give yourself a slight edge when all is said and done will improve your chances of winning out overall. Another card that I really feel that I should cover is actually the fact that you can tech cards into here that aren't actually solo dark, so you don't have to focus on it just being a complete dark deck. If you do decide to go with Energy Switch and my little homeboy Energy Search, you can afford to run cards like Terrakion. Due to having Energy Search, as I said, you will be able to actually run lower numbers of energy, which means you could take the Dark Energy counter down to 9, run 3 Fighting Energy, and you're set to actually have Terrakion or to retaliate, effectively aiding your mirror match and giving you yet again another edge. That combined with Energy Switch gives you a chance to actually have a 1-turn retaliate. If your opponent knocks out a Darkrai, you advance to Sableye with energy on it. Your opponent's going to think, oh, this is going to be a sacrificial Sableye. It's going to give me another prize here. You then play down the Energy Search for Fighting Energy and use it as your manual attachment. You then re-retreat Sableye, Energy Switch Energy plus onto Terrakion, and oh, you've just got a 90 damage retaliate out of nowhere in 1 turn. It's worth contemplating. It may draw away from the deck's consistency a little. I would never suggest running more than 2 Terrakion at most, but it is something worth testing, especially if your local meta is heavy in Darkrai. Another card I want to cover is Super Rod. As you may have noticed by looking at the list, there is absolutely no recovery in this deck, and 9 times out of 10, when you lose a Darkrai, you're most likely sending 3 energy to the discard pile. Now, if Dark Patch is looking quite unlikely at the moment, you may still want that energy back. You might want to still get some use out of it. A card like Super Rod will at least allow you to put those 3 energy back in your deck. Effectively, you can just put to send the Darkrai back in to give you something else to recruit with, or recruit for even, and well, that's all there is to really say about Super Rod. It's effectively just resources, you want them back. With all that covered though, I'd just like to put out a quick note about how I feel Speed Darkrai should be run. You guys can feel completely free to pop up some comments, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my personal preference for the idea of Speed Darkrai is to actually pull back slightly on the Turn 2 Darkrai. I know that's the whole point of the deck, but I actually prefer the idea of, if you can get the Turn 2 Darkrai, set it up, but don't start attacking with it. Keep that Sableye in the active position. Start setting up a second Darkrai. As soon as you've got another Darkrai on the bench with at least a single energy, you can afford to go in with the initial Darkrai and start swinging hard and fast. I personally don't favour the idea of getting a Turn 2 Darkrai and rushing in with nothing but a Sableye on the bench. It just leaves you in a weaker position to recover with. So it may be worthwhile every now and then to, instead of go for the Turn 2 Darkrai, pull back for Turn 3 Darkrai attack and make that Sableye do the work for you. Get yourself that second Darkrai. Just so that after you actually lose your initial Darkrai, you actually have something to fall back on. You do have options. With that said, I think I'll wrap this up now. I apologise if this hasn't been the best or most informative episode. If you guys have any suggestions on how to improve this, be it visual, be it in my delivery, be it anything, feel free to pop it down in the comments or feel free to actually pop it on Twitter. It's FutureSight YT. I will leave a link to it in the description. Any suggestions that can help improve the show for you guys are gladly welcome. That being said, I don't want anyone coming in trolling and saying, well, this was rubbish. I mean, if you don't like this, then please inform me why you didn't like it, just so I know how to fix it, just so I can actually improve it for you guys. That being said, if you did like this episode, don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Until next time, I've been Joey. You guys are the top percent. Later.